Three black SUVs roll to a stop outside a cracked apartment building on the south side of Chicago, and for one full second, nobody on the street breathes. Curtains shift in windows up and down the block. A group of kids freeze mid-game, basketball bouncing once, twice, then rolling into the gutter. Doors open a crack. Somebody's grandmother leans out onto her porch, one hand pressed to her chest. For men step out, black suits, black shoes, no expression at all. They walk without hurry, the kind of men who already know no one will stand in their way. The tallest one walks straight to a door with peeling green paint, buttons crooked on the frame, a busted porch light hanging loose above it. He knocks twice. Brielle Sutton opens the door, already bracing for bad news. Eviction papers. Collection notice. Something else she can't afford. She's still in her work uniform, hair pulled back, tired in the way that lives in the bones, not just the face. "Is Miss Brielle Sutton home?" the man asks, polite, almost gentle, like the question itself doesn't belong to the men standing behind him. "That's me," she says, voice careful. He holds out a thick cream envelope, sealed in black wax. Two words are printed across the front. Confidential contract. Nothing else. No company name. No explanation. What is this? Everything you need is inside. Her hands shake slightly as she breaks the seal. She doesn't pull the papers all the way out. Not on her own porch, not with half the block watching. She just stares at the first line long enough to feel her stomach drop, then folds it shut again before anyone can see her face change. Is this a joke? She almost laughs. Some kind of scam? Before we find out what happens next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. The man's expression doesn't change. Mr. Kong does not ask twice. The name means nothing to her yet, but something in the way he says it, flat, certain, final, makes the hair rise on her arms. She has spent her whole life hearing she'd be beautiful if only she lost the weight, if only she looked a little more like the women men actually chased. She stopped waiting for that kind of attention a long time ago. 2 years ago, she buried her grandmother, the only family she had left, and she still pays the woman's hospital debts every single month. She works 2 jobs to do it. Mornings at a grocery store, nights cleaning glass towers where executives leave half-eaten lunches behind without a second thought. She still packs the extra sandwiches for the old veteran 3 doors down. Kindness is the only inheritance she has left. "I need an answer, Miss Sutton," the man says. "Tonight." She looks past him at the SUVs, at the neighbors still watching from their windows, and something in her chest tells her that refusing might be more dangerous than saying yes. She gets in the car. Nobody speaks during the ride. The doors lock the moment the car pulls off the curb. A soft click she feels more than hears. The man in the passenger seat touches his earpiece twice, murmurs something too quiet to catch. Halfway across the city, the driver suddenly changes lanes, taking a longer route past the river instead of the highway. Nobody explains why. Brielle presses her palm flat against her knee to stop it from bouncing and watches the skyline slide by, streetlights sliding over leather seats that cost more than her monthly rent. The car stops beneath a tower that seems to disappear into the clouds. Guards open the door before she can reach for the handle. An elevator swallows her whole, numbers climbing higher than she's ever gone in her life, and by the time the doors open, her heart is slamming against her ribs. The penthouse is quiet, too quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows show the whole city glittering beneath her feet like something that isn't real. A man stands with his back to her, looking out over Chicago. When he turns, the room seems to shrink around him. "Sit," he says. Not a command. An offer. She doesn't. "I don't want your money." "This isn't about money." "Then what is it about?" "I need a wife." The words land flat and quiet, and for a second she thinks she misheard him. "A wife," she repeats. "On paper. For 1 year." He doesn't blink, doesn't soften it. "A business agreement. Nothing more." She wants to laugh again, but nothing comes out. A folder slides across the glass table between them. Photographs spill out. Her apartment building, photographed from a parked car. Her grocery store, a man watching from across the street. Her own front door, time-stamped from 3 different days. The air leaves her lungs. You became a target the moment you walked past the wrong meeting, Kong says, voice low and even. 3 groups are looking for you now. Marrying me is the only thing that puts you somewhere they can't reach. I don't even know what I saw. They don't know that. She stares at the photographs, at her own front door caught on camera by strangers, and the fear finally becomes real in a way it hadn't been on the ride over. Why me? Why not someone from your world? My enemies study everyone I know, he says. They'd never think I'd choose someone they overlooked. The words should feel insulting. They don't. They feel honest, and somehow that's worse. Around them, the staff along the far wall keep their eyes fixed forward. Back straight, voices nowhere to be found. A man near the elevator flinches slightly when Kong shifts his weight, as though even stillness from him carries a warning the rest of the room already understands. She shakes her head, pushing the folder back across the table. I can't do this. He doesn't argue. He doesn't press. He simply slides the contract away from both of them. You may leave. It's the last thing she expects him to say. She stands, unsteady, and walks toward the elevator, telling herself she imagined the flicker of something behind his eyes, telling herself this whole night was some elaborate mistake she'll laugh about tomorrow. The elevator doors are almost closed when gunfire erupts 3 floors below. Security floods past her, weapons drawn. One voice cutting through the chaos louder than the rest. Protect Miss Sutton, not Mr. Kong, not the boss, her. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello and know how far along our story is going with you. Glass is still falling 3 floors below when a guard grabs Brielle by the arm and pulls her back into the penthouse instead of the elevator. Not that way, he says. Move. She doesn't argue. Her legs carry her without her permission, following 4 men in black through a hallway she never saw, down a stairwell that smells like concrete and gun oil, into a parking garage where an armored SUV already has its engine running. Kong is already inside when they shove her in beside him. His jaw is tight. A thin cut runs along his knuckles, blood beating at the edge. You're hurt, she says, before she can stop herself. It's nothing. The car lurches forward, tires screaming against concrete, and somewhere above them more gunfire cracks through the night. A lawyer she's never met sits across from her, already holding the contract open on his lap. Pen extended toward her like this is the most normal thing in the world. Now, Miss Sutton, Kong says, voice steady despite the chaos outside the windows. You wanted proof this was real. She stares at the gunfire flashing against the glass, at the blood on his hand, at the 4 names of men outside who are trying to kill her over something she never asked to know. She takes the pen, not because she trusts him, because for the first time in her life, surviving matters more than being right. Her signature comes out shaky, barely legible, nothing like the careful handwriting she uses on grocery store schedules. Kong signs his beneath it without hesitation, like he's done this before, like nothing about this moment costs him anything at all. The wedding happens 2 days later, inside a private room with marble floors and no windows. No flowers, no music, just 2 lawyers, 3 witnesses, and a photographer paid to guarantee the pictures never leave the building. The rings are simple platinum bands. When Kong slides one onto her finger, his hands are steady and his eyes give away nothing. Brielle keeps waiting for the moment to feel real. It never does. It just feels heavy, like she's carrying something far bigger than a piece of jewelry. Congratulations, the lawyer says flatly, closing his folder like he's finished a business deal, because that's exactly what this is. The mansion swallows her whole. Marble hallways stretch longer than her entire apartment building. A private chef prepares meals she doesn't recognize the names of. Security patrols the grounds in shifts, radios crackling low behind manicured hedges. She expects Kong to treat the house like his territory and her like a guest who overstayed her welcome. Instead, he keeps his distance in a way she doesn't expect from a man who ordered her to marry him. He never enters her room, never demands conversation over dinner. When staff speak to him, he answers with a level of respect she's never seen from a man with that much power. She starts noticing things. The way the housekeeper's eyes crinkle with something like relief when Brielle remembers her name is Carol. Not just you there. The way the young groundskeeper, barely out of his teens, lights up when she thanks him for trimming the roses along the east wall. She starts baking on Sunday afternoons, filling the enormous kitchen with the smell of cinnamon, leaving plates out for anyone who wants one. Within 2 weeks, the mansion sounds different. Laughter drifts down hallways that used to only carry footsteps. A guard named Marcus, built like a linebacker and known for never smiling, catches himself grinning at something Brielle said in the kitchen and quickly wipes it off his face like he's been caught breaking a rule. Kong notices from a distance. Security reports that usually track threats and breaches now include lines he never expected to read. Staff morale up. 2 employees volunteered for extra shifts without being asked. Kitchen requests for more sugar and cinnamon. 3rd week in a row. He watches the footage longer than necessary one night, replaying a clip of Brielle laughing with the cook over something burned in the oven, and he doesn't understand why he can't stop watching it. Before we go any further, if you've ever felt overlooked by people who didn't deserve your kindness, drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one. Her view of him cracks open one afternoon when she finds paperwork left carelessly on a side table. Hospital donations, scholarship funds for kids in Detroit and Cleveland, housing grants for veterans in Georgia. All of it anonymous, none of it public. Numbers large enough to change hundreds of lives, hidden behind shell companies with no name attached. She confronts him at dinner, sliding the folder across the table the way he once slid photographs across glass. You never told anyone about this. It's not for credit. People think you're a monster. Maybe I am one, he says, meeting her eyes without flinching. That doesn't mean everything I touch has to be ugly. She doesn't know what to do with that answer. It sits heavy in her chest for the rest of the night, refusing to leave. Can a man capable of the things she's seen also be capable of this? She doesn't have an answer. She isn't sure she wants one, because either answer terrifies her for different reasons. Late that night, unable to sleep, she walks past the security office on her way to the kitchen for water. The door is cracked open. 2 voices drift out low and clipped. Timeline moved up. Whoever's planning this isn't waiting anymore. Last attempt got sloppy. Won't happen twice. The next assassination attempt won't miss. Brielle freezes against the wall, glass forgotten in her hand, ice-cold water sliding down her wrist without her noticing. The danger was never over. It's getting closer. The bullet misses Brielle's shoulder by 6 inches, because Kong shoves her sideways into a doorway a half-second before the shot. They're standing outside a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, some errand Brielle insisted on running herself, and now glass rains down around them as another shot shatters the window behind where she stood a moment ago. Down, Kong says, low and controlled, pressing his body between her and the street until his own security floods the block and drags the shooter into a van before pedestrians even finish screaming. Later, in the car, her hands won't stop shaking. His don't shake at all, but there's a stillness in him that feels louder than panic. You stepped in front of me, she says. I know. You could have let your men handle it. I know that too. She studies the side of his face, waiting for an explanation he doesn't offer, and something about his silence tells her more than words ever could. Someone inside his own organization leaked her schedule, her coffee shop, her routine. Someone close enough to know things only a handful of people should know. And Kang's expression when his security chief reports it back to him is colder than she's ever seen it. But at breakfast the next morning, None of that coldness is there. You put too much sugar in your coffee, he says, watching her stir in a third spoonful. You put none in yours. That's not normal either. The corner of his mouth almost moves. Almost. These moments become a pattern neither of them planned. Quiet breakfasts, comfortable silence over the newspaper, small jokes that shouldn't exist between two people who signed a business contract instead of vows. She learns pieces of him slowly, the way sunlight moves across a room without anyone noticing until it's already changed everything. His father ruled through fear until the day he died from it. His older brother ruled through cruelty until cruelty caught up with him too. Kong inherited an empire built on other men's mistakes, and somewhere along the way he decided love was a door he'd rather keep locked than risk walking through. You never smile, she says one evening, watching him review documents by lamplight. There's nothing funny about my life. That's not what I asked. He looks up at that, something unreadable crossing his face, and for the first time he doesn't have an answer ready. She doesn't push. She just sits there with him in the quiet, and somehow that feels like more progress than any argument could have made. Everything shifts 3 days later. The flash drives Brielle found months ago, the ones that started this entire nightmare, finally get fully decoded by Kang's tech team. Brielle is in the room when the files load onto the screen, rows of financial records and internal communications spilling out in front of them. Kang's expression changes as he reads. Not anger, something closer to grief wearing anger's clothes. This isn't outside money, he says quietly. This is one of my own council members. The documents don't just expose stolen funds and shell companies. They expose a pattern of betrayal stretching back years, decisions made behind Kang's back, allies who disappeared not by accident but by design. Buried in the files is a name Kong clearly recognizes, tied to the death of someone he once trusted enough to call a friend. His hand goes still against the desk. Kong. Brielle says his name carefully, watching something break open behind his eyes. He doesn't answer right away. When he finally looks at her, there's something in his expression she's never seen from him before. Something that looks dangerously close to needing someone else in the room. Brielle, I need to tell you something. She waits. The air between them feels thin, charged, like the moment right before lightning finds the ground. He opens his mouth, closes it again. Whatever he was about to say folds itself back down inside him, and instead he just says, "Get some rest. It's late." He walks away before she can respond. She stands there alone in the office, replaying the moment over and over, telling herself she imagined the way his voice caught, telling herself it meant nothing. She goes to bed feeling something she doesn't have a name for. Not quite hurt, not quite rejected, just quietly, achingly alone in a house full of people paid to protect her. She doesn't sleep well. Sometime after 2 in the morning, distant voices pull her out of a shallow doze, and she assumes it's just the night shift changing outside her window. In the morning, her door is open. Her bed hasn't been slept in. Her room is empty, closet undisturbed, nothing missing except her. On the pillow where her head should be, one small object catches the morning light. Her wedding ring. Alone. Brielle's wrists are bound to a metal chair inside a warehouse that smells like rust and river water, and the man pacing in front of her hasn't stopped talking in 20 minutes. His name is Terrence Voss's rival. No, she doesn't know his name at all, and that's what scares her most. He's never introduced himself. He doesn't need to. Everyone around him flinches when he walks past, the same way Kang's people used to flinch, except this man's calm feels different. Kang's stillness feels like control. This man's stillness feels like hunger. The drives, he says again. Where are they? I already told your men. I don't have them anymore. He crouches until they're eye level, close enough that she can smell cigarette smoke on his jacket and something colder underneath it. Here's what I think happened. I think you memorized something on those drives. Names. Numbers. Enough to be dangerous even without the files. I can barely remember my own grocery list. For a moment, something almost like amusement crosses his face. Then it's gone. Kong gave up loyal men for you, gave up peace inside his own council. You understand how insulting that is to people who bled for this organization. She doesn't answer. Her jaw is set, her eyes steady, even though her heart slams so hard she can feel it in her throat. He straightens, checks his watch, and says something to the man near the door that she doesn't catch. Then he leaves her alone in the dark, which somehow feels worse than the questions. She works the rope against the chair leg the second the door shuts, ignoring the burn against her wrists. She spent 2 years cleaning offices where executives left their access codes taped under desk drawers, where careless men left doors unlocked because they assumed no one like her was paying attention. She learned a long time ago that being underestimated is its own kind of weapon. The rope loosens. Not free yet. Close. Across the city, inside a war room lit only by monitors, Kong stands over a table covered in maps and photographs. And for the first time his advisors watch him ignore every piece of advice they offer. Let her go, one older man says, voice tight. Reclaim the council, reclaim your position. No woman is worth an empire. She's not a woman I'm trading for territory, Kong says, not looking up. They'll use this against you. Then let them. His voice never rises. It never needs to. Find her. They trace signals, cross-reference warehouse leases, narrow 40 locations down to 3. Then, without warning, the feed on the security monitors goes black. All 3 locations. All at once. Kang's advisor swears under his breath. Someone's jamming us. Then they know we're close, Kong says, which means they know exactly where she is. That single realization changes everything. This isn't a man hiding. This is a man waiting. Inside the warehouse, the rope finally slips loose. Brielle doesn't run for the door. She notices another prisoner chained to a pipe across the room. A young man barely older than 20, terrified and silent. She freezes, torn between the exit and the boy watching her with pleading eyes. She chooses him. She's halfway through the second, not when the door swings open early, footsteps returning sooner than she expected. She barely has time to shove the boy behind a stack of crates and drop back into her chair, wrists crossed loosely like she's still bound, heart hammering so loud she's certain he can hear it. The man studies her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifts. You're a lot smarter than they told me, he says quietly, and pulls a gun from his jacket. Outside, 3 vehicles arrive in complete silence. Engines cut a block away. Men moving on foot through the dark. Kong leads them himself, ignoring every protocol his security team argues against. Inside, the man raises the gun toward Brielle, and in that single frozen second, she does the only thing she can. She knocks the chair sideways into him, throwing off his aim, and the shot buries itself in the wall instead of her chest. The door bursts open a heartbeat later. Kang's voice cuts through the chaos. Brielle. The man spins toward him, gun raised, and for one unbearable second nobody moves. Then Kang's own security drops him from the doorway before he can fire again. Kong crosses the room and pulls Brielle up from the floor, checking her hands, her face, like he needs to confirm with his own eyes that she's still breathing. I should never have involved you in any of this, he says, voice low, controlled but not steady. You stopped being my mistake a long time ago, she answers. He doesn't pull her into his arms the way she expects. He simply stands close, one hand resting briefly against the side of her face, like he's memorizing that she's real. No kiss. No dramatic words. Just 2 people finally allowing themselves to feel something they'd both been avoiding since the night the SUVs pulled up outside her door. Later, back inside the mansion, Kong explains what the decoded files revealed. The man in the warehouse wasn't hired muscle. He was working directly for someone on Kang's own council, someone who believes Kong has grown too compassionate, too distracted, to protect the organization anymore. They think loving someone makes you weak, Brielle says quietly. For men like them, Kong answers. It does. That's exactly why they're afraid. That night, a formal message arrives from the council. No threats wrapped in politeness this time. A single ultimatum, read aloud by Kang's most trusted advisor, his face pale in the lamplight. Surrender leadership immediately, or the marriage is declared invalid before the week ends, stripping Brielle of every protection the contract ever gave her. Kong reads it twice and sets it down without a word. What are you going to do? Brielle asks. He looks at her for a long moment, and for the first time, she realizes she already knows the answer, and it terrifies her almost as much as the warehouse did. The council chamber goes silent the moment Kong walks in without a single bodyguard behind him. 12 men sit around a long table inside a private estate outside Seattle, the same room where this entire nightmare began months earlier. Rain taps quietly against the windows. Every man here expects a fight tonight. Instead, Kong sets one folder on the table, closes it beneath his palm, and says nothing at all. The silence stretches long enough to feel like its own kind of pressure. I'm stepping down, he finally says. A few men exchange glances. One leans back satisfied. Another watches Kong carefully, like he's waiting for the trick hidden inside those words. Harold Whitfield, the oldest man at the table, speaks first. You're certain about this? Effective tonight, Kong says. Leadership transfers to whoever this council selects next. Marcus Delacroix, the youngest member, doesn't hide his relief. This is the right decision. For the organization. For all of us. I have one condition, Kong says, sliding the folder toward the center of the table. Read this first. Whitfield opens it. His expression shifts slowly, the way a man's face changes when the ground underneath him starts moving. This is impossible, he mutters. Read further, Kong says. Another council member, a heavy-set man named Preston Bird, snatches a page and scans it, then throws it back down. This is a desperate man trying to save himself. Timing accusations the exact night he's expected to lose power? That's not evidence. That's theater. Voices rise around the table. One man defends Kong, saying his record speaks for itself. Another argues loudly that grief and pressure have clouded his judgment. A third simply watches Marcus, studying him the way a man studies someone he's beginning to doubt for the first time. Kong lets them argue. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't defend himself. He simply waits, hands folded, the same stillness he's carried since the night 4 men in black suits knocked on Brielle's door. Marcus straightens his jacket, addressing the room like a man already certain of his victory. Gentlemen, I understand loyalty. I understand wanting to believe the best about someone we've trusted for years. But sentiment has cost this organization enough already. Kong finally speaks. You're right. Sentiment has cost us a great deal. He nods once toward the door. A woman from his legal team enters, carrying a small recorder. She sets it on the table without a word. These recordings weren't gathered by my people, Kong says. They came from a federal wiretap unrelated to anything I control. I didn't create this evidence. I only found it, and I made sure it reached the right hands before tonight. The recording plays. A voice fills the room, calm, familiar, discussing payment schedules, discussing Brielle's daily routine, discussing, in careful detail, exactly how to remove Kong from power without starting a war that would draw federal attention to the entire syndicate. Every head slowly turns toward the same man. Marcus doesn't move. For the first time all night, his composure breaks completely. I did this to protect what we built, he says, voice tightening. You were becoming distracted. Soft. A leader in love is a liability to everyone around him. Kong studies him for a long moment before answering, and when he finally speaks, his voice carries no anger at all. Only certainty. You spent 6 months planning my downfall, he says. I spent 6 months planning for exactly this conversation. That's the difference between us. You saw love as a weakness to exploit. I saw it as something worth protecting carefully enough that men like you would never see it coming. No one at the table speaks. Whitfield closes the folder slowly, the way a man closes a chapter he never expected to read. Security moves in. No one objects this time. Marcus is escorted out through the same doors he walked through with confidence 20 minutes earlier, and the room he leaves behind feels different, lighter, like something poisonous has finally been removed from the walls themselves. Whitfield rises, extending a hand toward Kong. The council owes you an apology. You don't, Kong says. You owe the organization better instincts next time. It's not cruel. It's simply true, and every man in that room understands it. Hours later, the city lights blur past the car windows as Kong finally allows himself to exhale. Brielle is waiting when he walks through the mansion doors, still in her robe, hair loose, clearly unable to sleep while she waited for news. How did it go? It's finished, he says. The council knows the truth. My position isn't in question anymore. She studies his face carefully. You don't look like a man who just won. He's quiet for a moment, standing near the fireplace, watching the flames instead of her. I kept waiting to feel relief. All I feel is tired. It's the most honest thing he's ever told her. She sits beside him, not saying anything, simply staying close enough that he doesn't have to be alone with it. After a while, he speaks again, quieter this time. My father built this empire out of fear. My brother built his reputation out of cruelty. I spent my whole life believing power required becoming someone I didn't want to be. He finally looks at her. You never once asked me to become someone else. You just stayed. The torn halves of the marriage contract still sit on the side table where they've rested since the night they signed it in a moving car with gunfire behind them. Kong reaches for them now, studying the tear down the center. No more pretending, he says. Her chest tightens. What happens now? Only if you choose, he says, and for the first time since she's known him, his voice carries something close to nervousness. I've spent my whole life deciding things for other people. I don't want to decide this. I'm asking. He reaches into his jacket and produces a small box, plain, without any of the polish the fake wedding carried. Inside sits a simple ring chosen instead of arranged. Marry me for real, he says. No contracts. No conditions. No council watching. Just this. Brielle looks at the man who once terrified an entire room simply by entering it, now standing in front of her with nothing but honesty in his hands. No security team, no folder of threats, nothing between them but the truth. Yes, she says, and means it completely. He slides the ring onto her finger, and this time, neither of them waits for the moment to feel real. It already does. Weeks pass. The mansion feels different now, warmer, louder, full of the kind of ordinary happiness neither of them expected to find inside a life built on contracts and consequences. Brielle still bakes on Sunday afternoons, cinnamon drifting through hallways that once only carried footsteps and warnings. The staff still light up when she walks into a room. Kong still doesn't smile often, but when he does, it belongs entirely to her, and everyone in that house has learned to notice it. She once believed kindness made her invisible to the world. Instead, it became the one thing powerful enough to change a man everyone believed incapable of love, the one thing his enemies never accounted for and never understood. Late one evening, a folder lands on Kang's desk from a contact in New York. Inside is a report about a new organization expanding into American cities. Names attached to it that Kong hasn't seen in years. He reads it once, sets it aside, and looks toward the living room, where Brielle sits curled on the couch, laughing quietly at something on television, completely unaware. The danger isn't over. It rarely stays over for men like him, but for the first time in his life, Kong has something worth protecting enough to face whatever comes next, and that, more than any empire he's ever built, feels like the only kind of power that matters. Sometimes the strongest empires aren't built on fear. They're built on the one promise two people refuse to break. If this story moved you even a little, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. These stories are made to inspire, and your voice in the comments might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Tell me what part hit you hardest, and share this with someone who needs a little hope tonight.